It's my pleasure to greet you here at the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And if you're a regular listener or viewer, you know what's about to happen. I'm going to hear on this Friday how I stunk it up in our weekly Clark Stinks segment.
School's back in session.
That's right. Later, I got good news for you. If you're a first-time home buyer, this is something I never imagined I would say coming up.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
Clark.
So that make you self-conscious? You're not doing the Christa Clark Stinks dance today?
I'll do it next.
Okay.
All right, Clark, you stink worse than my dog's breath after a long run. On today's episode, you discussed if a homeowner is faced with an escrow shortage, you should pay the escrow shortage all in one lump sum or pay an increased monthly mortgage payment until the difference is made up. You recommended paying monthly. I think this advice stinks because I've been in this situation twice before. If you do pay it monthly, there are two problems. First, the banks do not automatically reduce your monthly mortgage payment down to what it would have been after the difference is made up. And second, if you are looking to purchase a home within the next 6 to 12 months, the amount of your expenses and income on a monthly basis are reviewed, and a lower monthly payment is advantageous for you. Thanks for all you do and your wonderful financial advice, Kelly.
Kelly, your second point is absolutely valid and one that I never occurred to me that it would hurt you on your obligations, and that would be a big advantage paying it up front. On the second thing, it's not supposed to work that way. At your next reconciliation for escrow, the amount is supposed to be reduced. And going forward, since you have paid the back amount due, you should, in theory, have a lower payment. And it's a problem we used to hear often, that banks were cheating people by over-escrowing. But there's a very clear formula for what should be collected in escrow. And when I say it right now, it's not going to sound that clear, but it really is. They are supposed to take the amount of your taxes due and your insurance policy that you will have due, add the two of them together, divide them by 12. Then they're able to add as an additional cushion 2/12 of that amount over the course of a year to cover the possibility that taxes or insurance would go up. Hope that was clear.
Dear Clark, you stink so badly I can smell you from Arizona. Only kidding, of course, you rock. Anyway, as a third-party seller on Amazon for the last 18 years, your statement that third-party sellers have their own return policies is a bit off the mark. If the item is shipped by Amazon, not shipped by the third-party seller, it is subject to the exact same return policy as an item sold by and shipped by Amazon. When you are looking at an item to buy, there will be a box on the right side of the screen that will either say shipped by Amazon, sold by Amazon, or shipped by Amazon, sold by the third-party seller name. I'm guessing you know this, you just didn't explain it correctly. Cheers, and thank you for producing a great podcast. And then she lists this is from Mary. Mary lists the official language on the Amazon website.
Yeah, and it says specifically what you said, Mary. And if the seller's listing is eligible for Amazon Prime, will be subject to the same return policies as items fulfilled by Amazon that are outlined on this page. But it does say the other part that is important for you to know, since 70% of items being sold on Amazon are not actually Amazon items. It's not like going into Walmart and you're picking up items on the shelf. When you shop at Amazon, 70% of the time, the items are not actually Amazon originated items. And did that make sense that I just said that? Okay, just wanted to make sure. And Amazon says some seller returns policies may vary, and that's what we've had the complaints about.
Hey, Clark, what are you doing to us? About a month ago, you said I-bonds were no longer a good investment because the interest rate that they were now paying is too low to sell them and take the penalty for an early sale. So I sold mine. Then the other day, someone called in and you told them to buy I-bonds because they're a good savings vehicle. What gives, Joe?
Joe, let me explain. Okay, so that's out of context because what I said is that I-bonds that people bought when the interest rates were sky high because inflation was so sky high and the rates peaked at just under 10%. The way I-bonds work is there is the adjustment for the rate of inflation every 6 months. And then there is an amount you're paid as a bonus above the rate of inflation. Well, I-bonds were selling so well during that cycle of inflation that the feds were giving you zero bonus at all. So now that inflation has come down so much and is 2-point-something% again, what the feds are doing is they're now giving you a really great bonus in addition to the rate of inflation. So what I've been recommending is that people who have older I-bonds bought during the heavy period of inflation, where all you're getting is the inflation rate, it's worth it now with what you're earning in a 6-month cycle is so low to sell those I-bonds and turn around and buy new I-bonds that have the built-in accelerator that gives you the rate of inflation plus a spread. And the spread right now, I'm trying to remember, is it 1.3? Oh, come on. Come on. Is my brain gone?
It's okay. We have it on Clark.com.
Okay.
I appreciate all Clark does for our community, but I have heard him speak several times about the new real estate buyer agent rules. I'm afraid the information he is disseminating is incorrect and simply the talking points of the national media. I'm a real estate agent, and I challenge Clark to contact some actual agents and brokerages and see what is happening. A couple of cases in point. He says, quote, if a buyer is not careful, they may end up paying commission for a home the agent did not even find, end quote. That has always been the case, and a buyer's agent's job is not to simply find a home for the buyer, but a laundry list of other fiduciary duties that ensure the buyer is represented in the transaction. He also says sellers are no longer responsible for paying the buyer agent. That is incorrect. First of all, commissions have always been negotiable. However, in the real world, if you do the research, you will find that sellers are still indeed and will likely continue paying some, if not all, of the buyer agent commission, at least for the foreseeable future. When Clark states on air facts and quotes that are not actually true, it makes our job of helping the community buy and sell real estate much more difficult.
Thank you very much for that post. All right. So the way I've tried to explain this is that even though the rules have changed and now the buyer is legally responsible for the payment to the buyer's agent and the seller is responsible for the payment to the listing agent, that's the big change. The actual practical effects on the ground are going to be gradual and they're going to be erratic depending on what's happening in a particular part of the country. What it means is that a buyer now will have the ability to essentially represent themselves if they wish to, and there will be a lower commission. But my belief is that buyers directly benefit from having representation. Buying a home is extremely complicated, and having someone who is there as your advocate, to me, is really valuable. What that value is going to be, the marketplace will decide over time. But there is a real shift happening, but I don't want to make it seem like now that the new rules are in effect, that everything is suddenly different. At this point, it's more a procedural and paperwork difference. Over time, new business models will emerge and new pricing will emerge. It's just not happening, bam.
Clark stinks like the crazy old guy standing on the street corner yelling at people walking by and ignoring him. Put the Zelle rants to bed. According to J.D. Power, Zelle has the highest customer satisfaction ratings and lower than average scam rate compared to other peer-to-peer money transfer services. Maybe the new federal probe will reveal something, but people have spoken with their wallet. Find something else to harp about, Ben.
Ben, thank you. All right. So the probe going on concerning Zelle is that new data out shows that banks are not complying with the law on unauthorized transactions 2/3 of the time now. So with Zelle, there are things the banks are required to do by law. And then there's another procedure where the banks have said, okay, in these situations involving pretexting, we're going to step in and protect the customer. But even in cases where the banks have legal requirements to restore people's funds, like when somebody absconds with the money, somebody's cell phone is stolen and somebody uses it to steal money from Zelle, through Zelle from somebody's account, the banks are only restoring the funds 1/3 of the time. Zelle is so dangerous because it's embedded in your checking account. I can't stop talking about something that I see hurting people all the time.
And I would also say that the other peer-to-peer lending services have been around a lot longer, and people have gotten scammed, not from them, but through them for a lot longer. So there's definitely more data there on those than Zelle at this point when you look at surveys.
So if you think about Zelle, Cash App, and Venmo, if you want to avoid trouble, you only use them to send money to a family member or a friend. You could say if there's a service provider who came in and did work at your house and that person's standing right in front of you and they've finished the work and they want to be paid that way, okay, you could do that. If now more and more people who live on tips for a living, like a valet or something like that, they know people don't have cash, they say, well, you could Venmo me that or whatever. And I guess that would be okay. Again, they're right in front of you. You know you want to give them that tip, and that would be safe. It's when people are sending money to someone that you don't see, you don't necessarily know, and that's where people are getting scammed so much out of their money.
Or they're breaking into your account, sending you fake texts, and you give them a code, and they get into one of your peer-to-peer app payments. That's happened to people I know. Recently, someone wrote in about defective gold from Costco. You brushed off Chris's question about a chargeback. Why? You are constantly telling other listeners to do a chargeback for failure to deliver goods and services. Why does Costco get held to a different standard? According to the listener, Costco has failed to deliver the goods in the condition ordered. This customer has already called the customer service, and there's nothing they are willing to do. The Costco rep on the Clark Howard show has even reiterated the no returns accepted policy for this item. I'm not sure what they mean by that, the Costco rep on the Clark Howard show. So Costco
they say
should,
that's what I am.
Yeah, maybe so.
Costco
Costco should face the same consequences as any other company. Do you ask listeners to waste time calling the CEO of other companies before instead of doing a chargeback? Even if a chargeback is not appropriate for a non-sentimental reason, you should have explained why, Daniel.
Daniel, I'm guilty as charged, not remembering the circumstances of that question from before. But if it was just as you said, you're completely right. If I had a blind spot.
The gold had like a weird, it wasn't in the condition it was supposed to be. Then I think that as you stated it, yeah, a chargeback would make perfect sense. And if it was exactly like you said, I messed up. Clark, you stink worse than Limburger cheese hidden under a driver's seat for 3 months. I've been a long-time listener. It's a stinky cheese.
Oh.
When you refer to the cable monsters, I believe you're pretty biased. There are two teams competing to deliver your pay for entertainment, satellite and cable. One team is shackled by local franchise fees, access fees, and other government taxes, which are passed down to the consumer. The other team can go anywhere on any house and not have to pay those other additional fees. Also, the workers and employees of the cable company work and live in your community. They pay taxes in your community. They volunteer in your community. What does the satellite company provide back to your community? Having been in the cable TV industry for 23 plus years and worked in satellite 2 years prior, I can firmly say you should appreciate what the local cable company does and not be so critical. Pay for entertainment is going up in price for Netflix, Prime, and Disney. Are you going to be as critical of them too? Thank you for your years of common sense saving advice and valuable financial information, but on this, maybe you could be a little more unbiased, Paul.
Paul, thank you. Okay, so several things. The satellite industry is, in terms of providing video entertainment, pretty much going extinct. People don't need them anymore because of that internet connection that you provide at the cable company that they're able to get the streams. Okay, so why have I always been so harsh on the cable companies and use the fighting words cable monster? Okay, the reason goes all the way back 2 generations ago when we had a bunch of people in Congress who either never took economics or slept through economics class because they, in their this was stupid, set up monopoly cable companies and set up this corrupt system where there was only one franchisee in each territory and created the problem that I call the cable monster. If the Congress had done the right thing and did like what they did with cell phones, where they created the 4 players in each market. Now we have 3 and a struggling 4th.
They didn't create them, but they allowed.
4. It created so much innovation, so much price competition. And you don't see us having a guide to getting a better deal from the cable company, do you, on our website? Because there's only one to go to in a market. On the other hand, we've got this extensive guide and a tool to figure out what the cheapest cell phone plan for you is and cell phone company and all that.
Clark.com/cellphone plans.
Stop promoting. Anyway, it is a fierce competitive market.
I had that wrong. Clark.com/phone plan finder. Sorry.
You can't even do your advertisement.
This has been brought to you by Clark.com. The best money website, most trusted money website in the world.
Okay. So anyway, Paul, the whole thing for me is and it is a bias. It is a prejudice on my part. When an industry does not have to compete, that's when I get all fired up. If there were 3 cable companies in a market, I would be like, I wouldn't call them the cable monster. I'd want them just all fighting it out. And that creates the innovation, better service, better prices. So that's what it's about. Now, you mentioned at the end the increases from Netflix and Disney and Paramount and all that. They were all trying to get market share from each other. And then they were all like, was it really smart for us to lose these many billions? They were giving us the greatest gift ever, losing billions so we could watch video content really cheap. Now they're cutting back the amount of original shows they're doing, and they're raising prices. And Disney in their recent quarter said, we finally made a profit from streaming. And it was teensy tiny, but it was the big headline that they finally made money. That's a competitive industry, and they're able to set prices where the market will bear. And what can we do as a consumer? We say, hey, it costs too much for this, or it costs too much for that. I'm not going to have it anymore. That's the free market doing its job.
My mom turned my brother onto the podcast, and my brother turned me onto it. And although you've given me some great practical money-saving tips, like saving $400 a year on my cell phone service, Clark stinks like a backed-up cesspool during an August heat wave. You mentioned the safe driving course, which I take every 3 years, but you failed to mention that the course is frequently offered at a discount through AARP or sometimes even free through libraries or community organizations. Thanks again for all you do. I've actually saved money by listening to the podcast and constantly spread the word. Richard.
Okay, so this is why we do Clark Stinks. This is a perfect example because you just gave information I didn't know. I didn't know that AARP offered the safe driving thing at a discount. I had no idea and never heard that libraries or community organizations offer the safe driving course for free. I mean, that's fantastic information you just brought to your fellow listener or viewer, and I love that, because Clark Stinks is about me hearing from you things that I should have known or should have said differently, or just sharing with me where you're just mad as you could be at me. It's so that you have the opportunity to have the last word on something. And I appreciate it very much. And thank you. And if you're not aware and you didn't hear on a prior podcast or our YouTube show, in many states, if you take often it'll be a 6-hour safety course, you will get a multi-year discount on your auto insurance. Your insurer does not have a choice in states that require it. They have to give you the discount. And as much as auto insurance has gone up in price, you want that discount. And who knows, you might learn something that keeps you safe, keeps you out of an accident. Coming up ahead, I'm going to say something about houses I've never said in my life. I can't believe what I'm about to say. I have said for decades that it is so much better to buy a used home than a new. And I give many reasons, only some of them financial. But historically, the cost of a new home per square foot in most markets would be about 20% higher per square foot than a used home. And then non-economic reasons, I felt like when you buy a used home, it's not a felt, that you're in an established neighborhood, you kind of have a sense how that neighborhood has done and will do based on it having had time to basically to be digested in the marketplace. And often if you buy a used home, you don't have to worry as much about what might be built on empty land nearby, because it'll be in an area that is fully developed. There's no X factors. But for the first time ever that I've ever been aware of, new homes are pricing out cheaper per square foot than used homes. The data is staring me in the face. Oh my goodness. The data is from Zillow, and I'm looking at a chart that shows the average cost per square foot of new homes lower than used. That's like unbelievable and a giant movement in the marketplace. The other thing that I've shared with you a few times over the last 18 months is that the square footage of new homes is smaller. The average square footage is significantly smaller than it had been. And that's a direct effect of home prices having moved up so much, outrunning people's ability to afford a house. And now we're getting back to basics. Much more practical home designs using computer-aided design, being able to squeeze more livable space out of a smaller footprint, eliminating the rooms that people don't use, a formal living room, a formal dining room. You think about the waste in having to have utilities for it, maintenance for that square footage that nobody ever uses. I mean, man, unless you're a really great housekeeper and you have a formal dining room in your home, I challenge you to go in it and put your finger on something like a surface like the dining room table, and you'll see dust on your finger, just like I saw right here, rubbing across our broadcast table. So the efficiency that people are buying now and finding that they're happier in smaller square footage added to this crazy math that I assume is temporary because it's so out of whack with the historical pattern that a new house could actually be cheaper to buy on a square footage basis than a used home. I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth, Christa.
Okay.
I'm shocked.
So am I. Jackie in Kansas says, I received a class action settlement for $60. Which of these do you suggest I select to receive the money and why? My options are prepaid card, PayPal, Venmo, direct deposit to my bank account, Zelle, I know that answer, and paper check. Thanks for your help.
So I think, now remember, the real risk with the apps is to the sender, not the recipient. So if you have PayPal, Venmo, even if you have Zelle, and you want to get the money deposited any of those ways, that's just fine. Direct deposit to your bank account's a little more work. You're coughing up your bank account number. You could do that. Any of the options is fine. Prepaid card, nah, wouldn't do that. Prepaid cards are trouble prone. The money could have vanished from the card before you receive it. You could have breakage on it where you don't use the last amount on it. And the paper check, obviously I don't like anybody getting a paper check or sending a paper check for anything because of all the problems right now with the lack of security and safety with sending or receiving checks.
Caleb in South Carolina says, I've been listening to you since my college personal financial planning professor, shout out to Dr. Rinnie Martin, introduced me to you 15 years ago. You've helped me in so many ways over the years. My question has to do with my Roth IRA that I started when I was a college student. I've been contributing equally to 3 types of mutual funds within my Roth, and they've performed quite well. In learning more about ETFs, however, I'm wondering if it would be advisable to choose comparable ETFs and start investing in them instead. Is investing ETFs within my Roth IRA a good idea?
Yeah, so if you're in a situation where the mutual funds have a higher embedded management fee, definitely you want to convert. There's no tax consequence inside a traditional or Roth IRA, selling holdings and reinvesting the money. So if you want to sell those 3 mutual funds and buy the ETF equivalent, normally that will give you much lower costs going forward, which is why ETFs are such a giant deal now, because except for Vanguard, who in most cases with Vanguard, the equivalent fund has the same expense ratio as the ETF. Not every time, but usually they're the same. Most other situations involving ETFs, the ETF is a lot cheaper than the equivalent mutual fund. That would be a smart move. Now, having said all that, remember what I said about taxable accounts. You sell your holdings in a taxable account, you are likely to generate cap gains. You don't have to pay tax on it. And then reinvesting would cost you unless the fund provider has gotten an IRS letter that says that a conversion from the mutual fund into the equivalent ETF is a non-taxable event.
Jackie in Ohio says, are you seeing an uptick in restaurants adding $5 or more to the total tip after you've signed the receipt and left the restaurant? We've seen twice now on our credit card statement extra money being added to our bill even after we've left at least a 20% tip on the receipt. This isn't for large groups, just my husband and I are the ones eating out.
No.
I know, right?
No, I can't even imagine what that is. I mean, if you go to the dark side for a second, it's possible that the server is just inputting a little extra tip thinking that nobody's ever going to notice.
If it's the same restaurant, especially.
Same restaurant, that could be it. I can't think of any reason. And Jackie, I'd love it if you called and talked to the manager of the restaurant or restaurants involved and ask them, hey, by the way, I got this extra charge. What is it? And the only one that I know of that we discussed before is where if you pay digitally at the table, there are restaurants charging you extra for having paid digitally instead of handing your payment to the server himself or herself. But there are vendors that pass on the technology cost to a restaurant. They say, hey, it's free to use our technology platform. And then part of the deal is they're then charging each customer an extra fee when you use the technology platform to pay your bill. And that, I guess it's possible. That's what we're talking about here. You have any other theories?
That's my only theory on that one. But I also wanted to say I was on Nantucket this summer and having lunch with an islander. I went for a day.
And were you were people carrying you around on a chariot?
No, I'm not fancy. Anyway, there's a famous restaurant there, and it is like a very expensive place. That's why I only went there for one night. But this restaurant is well known and very fancy. And this lady lives on the island I was having lunch with, and she will do takeout from there. And she noticed the way that the bill is presented to you when you go pick it up, they hide that there's already a 20% service fee added to any takeout order from this restaurant. And so she didn't realize, then there's a tip line. And so she didn't realize that she had tipped, which obviously you should pay attention to what your total cost should be, but she hadn't. She'd been tipping an additional 20%.
Okay, so wait. Here's the big question. Anytime you see the mandatory service fee on a restaurant bill, the question you want to know, is any of that service fee actually going as tip to the workers, or is it just a junk fee added onto the bill? And that's why California has the new law banning exactly this practice at restaurants, because restaurants were trying to hold down the prices of items on the menu with the inflation that they've suffered as restaurant owners. And so they were having the menu prices, then they were having a junk fee, and then they were having the tip line.
I hate all that. I hate it. I hate the health fee, whatever. Just increase your prices and tell me what I'm paying. I know it's competition.
They know that the customer may say, oh, well, my entree was 23 and now it's 27. I'm not going to eat here. But if it says 23 and then the bottom of the bill has the junk fee, consumer behavior being what it is, most people don't perceive it the same way.
It's like the airlines and the hotels, and then
junk fee city.
Yes. I just want an all-in price. But that's me.
Why don't you start Christa's restaurant?
Because I don't want to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Restaurant owners work their tails off, and restaurant workers, I'm not cut out for that.
There are a lot of businesses where people work crazy amounts of time.
Insane amounts of hours.
Crazy amounts of time. If you're lucky enough not to have to work nights and weekends, I hope you have an absolutely great weekend this weekend, and be appreciative of people that actually are working in a restaurant tonight or through the weekend, on holidays, who knows what. Well, you and I are lucky enough to have nights and weekends off and free. And so have this weekend a wonderful time and know what we're about. Hopefully, we've saved you more. You spent a lot less. You're able to go out and enjoy yourself. But no matter what, don't let anybody ever rip you off. See you next week.